for one pass and one pass only. He sights a break in the clouds, turns control of the airplane over to the bombardier, again using the Norden bomb sight, steers the airplane over the target drop point, 35,000 feet, releases the weapon, 1,900 feet, it detonates. Sweeney has nowhere near enough fuel to get back to Tinian. Fortunately, the United States had captured the island of Okinawa months earlier. He lands on Okinawa, and as he is landing, one of his engines quits for lack of fuel. That's how close he was to running out of fuel.
So he was like just landing when it came out?
Yes. And so, that was August 9th, 1945. 6 days later, August 15th, 1945, the Japanese government submits their surrender documents to the Swiss embassy in Tokyo. They send them to the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C. They arrive here August 14th. You see 2 days for the dates for the end of World War II hostilities. August 14th in Washington, August 15th in Tokyo. And that's how the role that Enola Gay played in ending World War II. Questions? The tanker airplane. This is the prototype for the tanker airplane that used to refuel the SR-71s. Was called the KC-135. That's what it looks like. KC-135 looks just like this airplane. Well, this airplane has a kind of an interesting story to it. The Boeing company built the airplane so they could sell it to the Air Force as a tanker airplane. And then they decided they would like to try to sell it to the airlines as an airliner. And all they had to do was take out the tank, put in seats and windows, and they have an airliner. And they decide they're going to try a sales technique here. It turns out this one year, all of the world's airlines and their senior executives were meeting in Seattle, Washington for their annual convention. And Boeing, the company that made this airplane, is headquartered in Seattle. And so they said, while they're in town, they're going to have these really fast boat races on Lake Washington. And they're really great spectator sports. I don't know if you've ever seen these boats that go 200 miles an hour, tipping up the big rooster tail.
Yeah.
So they're going to have these races called the Gold Cup races on Lake Washington. Boeing has a corporate yacht. So they're going to invite the world's airlines executives to be their guests on the yacht to watch the races. And then when there's a break in the action, they're going to get their chief test pilot, a guy by the name of Tex Johnson, get in this airplane and fly it over Lake Washington. And then the Boeing people can say, there, ladies and gentlemen, could be the next proud addition to your airliner fleet. That's a pretty good idea, isn't it? Yeah. So the time comes, the chief test pilot gets into the airplane. He says, flying over Lake Washington, blah. Let's give him something to remember. So he takes this giant airplane, and he flies to Lake Washington, and he looks down, and he sees the Boeing corporate yacht with everybody looking up at him. He takes his airplane into a climb and proceeds to do a 360-degree barrel roll in this airplane.
Oh no. Do a barrel.
The Boeing executives are dumbstruck. They said, what is this lunatic doing? We're trying to sell airliners, not aerobatic airplanes. What is he, crazy? And so the next day, they call the chief test pilot into the president's office. Mr. Allen, his name was the president. And if you go to YouTube and put in -80 barrel roll, you'll see the actual video of this plane doing it. And it's narrated by the pilot, Tex Johnson. And while I'm a Midwesterner, I'm going to try my darndest to do a Texas accent, because you got to really hear him the way he says it. Here's what he says. He says, well, next morning, Mr. Allen calls me into his office. He says, what were you doing out there yesterday? I said, I was selling airplanes. Been doing this for 30 years. Knew it was perfectly safe, no danger whatsoever. Mr. Allen says to me, well, you know it. Now we know it. Let's not do it again. And that was fine, because this airplane becomes the Boeing 707, and they make thousands of these airplanes. Maybe the most successful airliner in airline history. Any questions on the -8?
-80 barrel.
-80 barrel roll.
-80 barrel.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Okay, very good. Let's come down here. We'll see cotton crops, boll weevils, down in the Mississippi Delta area. And after a while, Hufteland says, we want to make airplanes. We don't want to dust crops. So they sold the business to a guy. And because he operated in the Mississippi Delta, he called his company Delta Air Services. And when the winter came and there were no crops to dust, he said, well, I got airplanes. I ought to do something with them. So he was based in Alexandria, Louisiana. And he said, hey, anybody want to go to New Orleans? I can fly you there. Hey, you want to go to Birmingham? I can fly you there. Want to go to Atlanta? I can fly you there. And after a while, he found out he was making more money flying people than he was dusting crops. So he stopped dusting crops and turned his company into
Delta
Airlines. So that is Delta's first airliner right there.
Oh, wow.
Air France. And when they finished, they brought it back to Paris, to Charles de Gaulle Airport. They refurbished it. They flew it to Dulles Airport. It sat on the tarmac here for several months till the museum was ready to be opened and receive it. They then opened the huge hangar doors you see there, and they towed the airplane in. So it, like many of the modern airplanes you see here today, got to the museum by flying here. That's why we're at Dulles Airport. That's exactly why. When Air France introduced Concorde service, they wanted to show how fast it is. It flies at Mach 2. We all know what that means now, right? Twice the speed of sound. 1,500 miles per hour. They wanted to show how fast it was. So here's what they did. They took a Boeing 747, that was that giant airplane you saw that the shuttle came in on, and they took off from Paris, France, and they were flying to Boston's Logan Airport. At precisely the same moment that the 747 took off from Paris, the Concorde took off from Boston. The Concorde flew across the Atlantic. It landed in Paris, stayed on the ground about an hour, turned around, flew back to Boston, landed in Boston 11 minutes before the 747 got there. About 3.5 hours to cross the ocean. Yeah. But they're not flying at all today. They're all museum pieces. Show you why they're not flying today. Concorde's flying anymore. Why are they all in museums? Have any of you ever flown across either the Atlantic or Pacific? Go to Europe? Anybody?
Ooh.
You've done that.
I went to Europe.
Huh?
I went to Europe.
You went to Europe? Yeah, okay. Does anybody remember how many seats across there were in the airplane that you were in?
6.
Wide-bodied seats.
6.
6, 8, I've even seen that.
6.
9 even, yeah. These airplanes are all the wide-bodied airplanes, like the 747 we saw, and they carry about 300 passengers. Let me show you the passenger compartment on the Concorde. It goes from here to there. How many seats across? There are
4.
4, absolutely. 2, aisle 2, yeah. It's all first class seating. So you got a lot of room between the rows. You're not sitting there with your knees in your chest. So there are 25 rows of seats. So we got 2 aisle 2, 25 rows. How many people can the Concorde carry? 100. So you've got an airplane that carries 300. You've got an airplane that carries 100. How do airlines make money? They sell seats. So what are you going to have to do to sell your seats in an airplane that only has 100 as opposed to 300? Get more seats. We can't put them in there. There's no room. No, you're going to have to charge a lot for every seat. At the time, you could fly economy from New York to Paris or London, round trip, for about $750, $800 maybe. That's not a fair comparison. This was all first class. So first class was maybe $2,000, $2,200. These guys were charging $5,000 to $6,000 for the flight. And even then, they were losing money. And so finally, at the end, the only way they were able to keep flying was the British and French governments, because only 2 airlines flew it, Air France and British Airways. The British and French governments said, we're not going to subsidize you anymore. And they said, well, if you're not going to subsidize us, we're not going to fly anymore. So they just stopped flying, and they gave all their airplanes, there were 13 at the end, to museums. And that's how we got this one.
Ooh.
Questions?
How did you get all of these airplanes in here for the first time?
With skill.
Giant hangar doors.
Yeah, but
Fans.
I saw with the Challenger that it was taller than the hangar doors.
No, they specially cut a little hole to get it inside.
Wow.
Yes, it's right there. If you look really closely, you'll see there's a little opening up at the very top that opens up and the tail just clears as it gets in.
For which plane?
He mentioned the
Challenger.
Discovery.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Sir? Yeah, sort of. Okay, real quick, because the guy's got to go. B-17 here. Well, the company that built this, Boeing, was building B-17s, and they said that in like 1937, they said, you know, if we take the B-17 wings, engines, and tail assembly, and make a round fuselage, we can actually, what are my words I'm looking for? Pressurize, that's the word I'm looking for. You could pressurize the cabin. So they started to make these. They're called the Boeing 307. And the government said, what are you guys doing? We're getting ready for a war. We want you to build B-17s, not Boeing 307 flying Klaus Stratoliners. And so they only made 9 of these. They sold 4 to Pan Am, 4 to TWA, and 1 to the president of TWA, your buddy, Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes specially configured his version of it for a trip. He was going to set the world speed record flying around the world. And he gets all of his changes ready, and he's ready to go, and it's 1939. Not a good year to go around the world. So Howard Hughes keeps the airplane, sells it to a couple of people, they sell it to somebody. Today, other than this one, the fuselage, Howard Hughes' airplane, sits on the Intercoastal Waterway in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as a bed and breakfast called a Cosmic Muffin.